All right, guys. So complementary and supplementary angles. You might have touched on these before. I'm not sure, but let's go ahead and see if we can. We're just going to start off with defining complementary angles. And then we're going to take a look at what some of them look like, and we'll practice some problems with them, okay? So really, our whole lesson is divided into these two parts. We'll just talk about complementary at first, and then we'll come back around and finish up with supplementary. Okay? So does anybody happen to know, before I tell you, what complementary angles are? Anybody know? That's
Go,
okay.
Olivia.
Angles that I don't know, angles that say nice things to each other. Oh no!
You just said that with the mic off.
Exactly what you said.
So you're almost right. Wink, wink. Almost right. Right meaning 90 degrees in geometry. So that is a helpful way to remember what complementary angles are. But here's their actual definition. They are going to be two angles whose sum is 90. Okay, we'll talk more about them giving complements a little bit later. But sum, remember, is just adding. So I'm just literally going to take two angles, add them together, and if it equals 90, they are complementary. That is the only rule. Notice I didn't say that they had to be adjacent, share a common vertex, none of that. None of that matters. If they're complementary, they add to be 90. That's it. So it's really a simple definition. You just have to remember that I just need two angles that add together to be 90. That's what I'm looking for, okay? So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that they could look. You could have two angles that are very separate from each other. So here's angle 1, maybe it's 60 degrees, and then maybe over here you have angle 2, which is 30 degrees. That's enough. 60 plus 30 is 90, so I can now say that angles 1 and 2 are complementary. All right, as long as I can verify some way that they do in fact add to be 90, it counts. Angle 1 and angle 2 are complementary. So they might look like that, completely separate, and then I just have measures that I could verify, yep, 60 plus 30 is 90. Or they could look like this. I could have something that I know to be a 90-degree angle, right? So if it has that little box in the corner, I know that thing is a 90-degree angle. What I might do is then break that 90-degree angle up into two smaller angles. So something like this. Now I have angles 3 and 4. I don't know what their measure is. I have no idea what the measure of angle 3 is. I have no idea what the measure of angle 4 is. But what do I know about them together? Together, they have to add up to be 90. Do you see that? Because I know that I have a right angle. I have the little box there. So because angle 3 and 4 together add up to be 90, that makes angles 3 and 4 complementary, even without even having any idea what their measure is in degrees. I don't know what it is. It doesn't matter. If the diagram is drawn like that, I know that those two angles together add to 90. So I still get to say angle 3 and angle 4 are complementary. Okay, so it could look very different. I could have two completely separate angles. I could have two angles that are in fact adjacent, and they really do make 90 together. Either one is perfectly legitimate. Okay, so the next thing I want to do, I am going to make a little chart here. And I want to, I'm going to give you an angle, and then we're going to figure out what its complement is. Okay, so I'll show you how to do this in a second. I have an angle, and then I want the complement of that angle. All right, let me give myself a couple lines here. And I'll show you what I mean. That's probably enough. All right, so watch this. We'll do the first one together. Let's pretend that I had an angle and its measure was, I don't know, 20 degrees. Okay, so if I'm trying to find the complement of this angle, that's just fancy math talk for what would I add to this angle to get up to 90?
70.
Yeah, it's just 70. So the complement of this angle is 70. And where did 70 come from? Because I'm just going to do 90 minus whatever that number is. So even when I put 80 in here, what are we going to get for the complement? It's got to be 10. Yes, just 10 degrees. Perfect. All right. Does everybody see that? These two numbers should always add to be 90. All right, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to fill in this side with the angle. I'm going to give you a whole bunch, and I want you to fill in what the complement would be. Okay? Some of them I'm going to try and trick you on at the end. All right, so let me give you a bunch. Let's do 35. Let's do 5. That doesn't look like a 5 at all. Sorry. Sometimes my 5s look like 6s. And that can be confusing in math. That's betterish. 5. Okay. Let's do, how about 45? And now I'm going to try and trick you. I'm going to do 100. And I'm going to do X. All right, fill this chart in as best you can.
And keep in mind, guys, that if you are handwriting these answers, you must include the degree signal sign. The electronic stuff that you guys do may not necessarily require you to do that, but to be precise, you should.
Okay, I'm going to be calling on people at random to help me answer this. Let me just grab your popsicle sticks here. Make sure I have, oh yes, here you are. D block. I should have different colors for each block. That would be smart, but I don't. Okay, you ready? So if my angle is 35, what would its complement be? Kaya?
55.
55 is correct. 55, get that in there. Okay, if my original angle is 5, what is its complement? Nick?
85.
85 is correct. If it's 45, what's the complement? Demetrius?
45.
Yeah, it is another 45. Okay, now trick question. So I'm not going to call on anybody for this trick question, but I'll take a volunteer. What do you guys think the answer is going to be for a 100?
-10.
So I would normally agree with you because 100 plus -10 absolutely gets me to 90, right? So here's the problem though. Even though mathematically 100 plus -10 really is 90, if my original angle is already bigger than 90, we're actually just going to say that it doesn't have a complement because it's already too big. It's already over 90. So I'm not going to delve into the negative angles. I'm just going to say it doesn't have one. So if I end up with an angle bigger than 90 or equal to 90, right? 90 itself wouldn't have a complement. I guess you could say 0. but we're just going to say it doesn't have a complement. Okay, now, what do you think we do for x? Does anybody have an idea what they think would go right here if my original angle is x? Okay, so I'm gonna go through some of the guesses that come through. Oh, and that's so funny that the same two guesses have been guessed in every class too. So one common guess is that 90 goes here. So here's the problem. I'm gonna ignore the one that's 100 because that's sort of a weird case. But anyway, so look at all of these other ones. If you take 20 and 70 and you add them together, you get 90, don't you? 80 plus 10 is 90. 35 plus 55 is 90. So if I have x and I put 90 here, if I added these two together, you get 90 plus x. Right? So, and that's different. I should just get 90. Because think about it. Let's say that this angle was actually 10. Then the complement's not going to be 90 anymore. Right? So 90 comes into play, but not right there. So I can't just put a 90. So another very common guess is to put a y. And although that's not technically wrong, it's actually making my life harder if I do that. Because once you introduce a new variable, now I need a whole second equation to solve for it. So I'm going down a road of systems of equations that I don't really want to. You can, but I can avoid it. All right, so let me give you a hint here. Remember how we got this number? This number came about because it's just 90 minus that number. Right? So to get this one, right, before, I didn't know that it was 10 at first. How did I get it? I did 90 minus 80. I did 90 minus 35 and it spat that out. I did 90 minus 5 and it spat that out. So use that idea and see if you can come up with an expression right here. Does anybody have a guess? We're so close. I'll give you another couple seconds if you want to put a guess in. No? All right. So here's what we do. To get this number, no matter what, ignore all of these. Aren't I always doing 90 minus this, 90 minus this, 90 minus this? I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to do 90 minus this. 90 minus x. That's what goes there. What? Yes, watch. Now add them together. Just like I add 20 plus 70 and I get 90, right? Add this plus this. Don't you still get 90? Isn't that neat? Because the x and the negative x are going to cancel each other out. I'm still going to get 90. So let's pretend that x was 10. If my original angle was 10. Well, 90 minus 10 would get me an 80 in that spot. And 10 plus 80, yeah, that really does work. So that's how I can do it, where it still follows all the rules. Okay, so using that idea, I'm going to expand on this a little bit. What if my original angle was 3x? Then I'm going to give you a real hard question. What if my original angle was something like 4x minus 10? Try those two. The first one's not so bad now that we have the x one done. The 4x minus 10 one, that one's still a little tricky. We'll work our way through that one together. But for the 3x, let's see. Sophia, if my original angle is 3x, what would its complement be?
I'm still kind of confused.
Okay, so let's go back. So let's go back up to this top one. Do you understand that 70 came from, well, rewind even further. These two angles always add up to be 90, right?
Yeah, I understand like those ones.
Okay. So in order to find this number, I'm just going to do 90 minus whatever that number is. So that's why when we came down here, if this thing is x, this is just going to be 90 minus x. So I'm going to do the same thing for this one.
So would it be 90 minus 3x?
That's it. 90 minus 3x. That's it. This number, whatever goes here, is always going to be 90 minus whatever that is. So for this last one, the reason why the last one is so confusing is because, watch, are you ready? Everybody watch me. Watch. Are you watching the screen? I hope so. You have to do this the right way. You have to do 90 minus this whole thing. And this part right here is where kids make a mistake. They don't subtract the whole thing. In order to subtract something that has two parts like this, it's called a binomial. If it has two parts, you have to put it in parentheses. There's no wiggle room here. You have to go like that. That's how you write it. It's still 90 minus that number, but you got to make sure you're subtracting the whole number. If you don't put the parentheses around it, you're only going to subtract this piece of it, not this one. You need to subtract all of it, and this is how you do it. So now that can actually be simplified, right? You can actually do some more with this. Let's go ahead and distribute that negative sign. Be careful, though. When you have minus a negative, doesn't that turn into a plus? You bet it does. And now, look, you can add the 90 and the 10. You get 100 minus 4x. Wow. Okay, I know what you're thinking, but Miss Savia, you said that you should be able to take this angle plus this angle, and it should get you to 90, just like it did with all the other ones. Doesn't it? Doesn't it? Try it. Take that and that. Add those two things together and tell me you don't get 90. You do, don't you? Look what's happening. Look, you have a positive 4x and a negative 4x, so they cancel. And then you have a negative 10 plus 100. It really is 90. Oh, geez, look at me shaking the camera here because I'm so excited. Isn't that something? It does add up to be 90 still. Weird. I know. It feels weird, right? But it's not. You just do 90 minus the whole thing. Okay, so now I want to do some practice problems with complementary. Okay, so I'm going to show you the two different ways that you're going to see it on your homework. Let me go ahead and mark this.
Then you do the math like she did.
Okay, ready? Let's flip. All right, so one way you're going to see problems done on your homework is they're going to give you a diagram. So they might give you something just like this, and they might say, okay, let's do 3x minus 10 for that and 2x for that, and they're just going to say find x. That's it. That's all the information that I need to give you. So take a moment and see if you can, one, write an equation that models this, and then two, solve that equation. I am going to tell you right now, I think I already mentioned it, but I can't remember because this is my third time through today. You do have to submit some of your work with your homework this evening. Okay, just like before, not on everything. Some of the questions don't require any work to be shown. But then some like this, you absolutely need to show me what you're doing. So I'm going to need to see your equation, and then I'm going to need to see you solving said equation. Okay, so take a moment, see if you can come up with something. If anyone would like to volunteer their equation, I will happily take it. Who's got an equation here that's going to work? Anybody? Where is everybody?
Could I volunteer?
Yes, go for it.
Okay, so 5x minus 10 equals 90.
Yes, I'm going to rewind back one little step. And you are definitely doing 3x minus 10 plus 2x together gets me to 90. Right? And that's, I know that those two angles add to 90 because of how the diagram is drawn. Those two angles have to add to be 90. So then, yes, I can go ahead and do 3x plus 2x and get that 5x minus 10 equals 90. Yeah, and now that you have an equation, it's just solve, 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 just like you guys do. Now, one side note about solving equations, right? If that's what's giving you trouble, if you find that throughout tonight's homework and as we're practicing this, that you can write the equation, but when you get the answer, it always seems to be wrong. You always seem to be messing something up in there. What that tells me is that you aren't sure about the algebra. You've forgotten the steps to solve an equation, okay? So here's what I want you to do if that is what happens for you, okay? If you can write the equation just fine, but then you can't solve it, you have to come to my help session because what's happening here is that you missed something in algebra. Maybe, or you forgot how to do it or whatever. So I need to make sure that I get you caught up to speed. I don't ever want you to feel like, well, I should know this already, so I'm not going to ask because I'm embarrassed and I know I should already know how to do it. I can't tell you how many things that me at my old age I should know how to do, but I don't. You can't know everything. So I don't want you to just be like, oh, I can't ask because I know I'm supposed to know it. Just ask. I'm not going to judge you, right? I promise there is so much that I should know how to do. I just told C Block, I don't know how to broil. I don't know. I've literally never broiled. There's been tons of recipes that I wanted to do, but it says broil and I don't know how to do it. So I just don't make those things. So I'm going to make a pledge that I will try and broil something this week because I need to learn too, right? I'm too old for this. I should learn how to broil. So same thing goes for you. Yeah, maybe you didn't pick up, or maybe you learned how to solve equations, but you were never good at it. Whatever, right? We need to, it says you need to be able to sort of evaluate yourself and say, you know what, I'm not great at this. So let me figure out how I can get better. So the whole moral of my story is don't be embarrassed because you think you should know something. Okay? So come and I'll help you. But I won't be spending a ton of time sort of going through how to solve these equations because I assume that you did get that in algebra. But if you didn't, come to the help session. That's literally what it's for. I will help you get caught back up. All right? So don't worry about it. Any Hoosers, I hope that you got 20. And I hope this works. By the way, another great thing about math is that you can check yourself. Gosh, I love that, right? If I know that x is 20, I could very easily find the measure now of each of these angles and verify that it really does add up to be 90. Let's see real quick. If I pop 20 in, 3 times 20 is 60, minus 10 would be 50. So this angle here comes out to be 50. And then this one here, let's see, 2 times 20, that's just 40. Yeah, and 50 and 40, yes, they really do add up to be 90. So I'm pretty confident that I've got this one right. Okay, let me show you another way that you're going to see it on your homework tonight. They might just say it in words. They might just say this. All right, so let's try something like this. So I kind of made this a two-parter. First of all, it's telling me that angle 1 and angle 2 are complementary. That word right there, when you see complementary, before you even keep reading, I'm hoping that in your brain you're like, oh, complementary, that means that they add to be 90. That's going to set up your model equation for you. Once I realize that, oh, I have two angles that are complementary, that literally means the two angles together add to be 90. That's my model equation right there. All right. And now I'm just going to keep reading and I'm going to pop in what I know. Oh, did my camera freeze again? Jeez, squeeze. What's the matter with this thing? So anyway, go ahead and write out your equation. I'll give you a minute while I reset my camera. Once I push that button, I know you won't be able to see this. So I'll give you another few seconds to finish copying this down if you haven't already, and then go ahead and write that equation and solve it. All right, I'm going to reset this. Okay, so would anyone like to walk me through the equation? What's it actually look like once you substitute everything in?
I haven't done the math yet.
I heard someone say something, but I couldn't make out what it was.
That was me making a comment to the
Oh.
class.
All right. I'll walk you through this one because maybe you're just like, oh, I just need to see it done one time. So angle 1 is just 6x plus 8. So I'm going to pop that in, 6x plus 8 plus, let's see, angle 2. Oh, that's just 2x plus 2. So I pop in 2x plus 2. And I already know that it's equal to 90. So all I have to do, ladies and gentlemen, is now just solve this equation. Now you'll notice I did make this a two-parter. I asked you to find x and find the measure of angle 1. Well, let's just focus on finding x first, okay? Let's figure out what x is, and then I can go back and find the measure of angle 1 if that's what I want. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look. And 6x plus 2x is just 8x. 8 and 2 is 10. So now I'm just going to solve. Again, if this is your issue, come to the help session so I can get you back up to speed. You should have gotten 10. All right, so there is the answer for the first part. They asked me to find x. X is 10, great. But now they added the second part. They want to know what the measure of angle 1 is. Well, luckily, it's really not that hard because now that I know that x is 10, I'm just going to pop it back in. 6 times 10 is 60 plus 8. That means angle 1 is just 68 degrees. That's it. Okay, so I'm just going to write that out. So x equals 10, and the measure of angle 1 is just 68. And I'll even say why. Because 6 times 10 plus 8 equals 68. That's how we got there. So on your homework, it's going to ask you for one bit of information. It's either going to ask you for x, or it's going to ask you for the measure of one of the two angles. All right, so always just make sure that you are answering the question that they asked. Oh, and I know what else you're thinking. Okay, well, Mrs. Sabia, what am I supposed to show on the homework? What do you actually want to see? I'd want to see all of this at least. If you want to throw in your model equation, if you use one, that's fine. But I would want to see that. I need to see your original equation and then how you solved it, just so I can make sure that you know what you're doing there. Okay, does anybody have any questions right now about complementary angles? How they work, what we do? Anything? Okay, now we're going to switch on over to supplementary, which works literally the exact same way, except they don't add to be 90. What do they add to? Does anybody know?
Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? Anyone?
If you had to guess, think about important numbers in geometry. It's not 90, because if they added to be 90, they'd be complementary. So take a wild guess what they'd have to add up to be supplementary. If it's not 90, it's probably... Yes, 180. Thank you. 180 is correct. All right, so that's what we're looking for this time. And that's, again, that is the only definition. They don't have to be adjacent. They can be adjacent, but they don't have to be. Now, if you think back to last week, you might be thinking, well, I thought we had a pair of angles that added up to be 180 already. You're right. This includes them. Those were the linear pairs. So if you have a pair of angles that you know are a linear pair, you automatically know that their sum is 180, right? It's kind of interchangeable. It's kind of neat. So let me draw you a couple of different ones. So here's a pair that are not adjacent, that are not a linear pair, but still have a sum of 180. Here's a angle 1, which has a 100-degree angle. And then maybe I have angle 2 over here. And I note that it has an 80-degree measure. So yeah, those two angles definitely have a sum of 180, because 100 plus 80 is 180. Great. So angle 1 and angle 2 are in fact supplementary. Awesome. Now let's look at a pair that really are a linear pair. So remember what we need for those. You're going to have a straight line, and then you're just basically going to have two angles that come off of that. There it is. There's a linear pair. Remember what you're looking for, that full rainbow. All the way from one side to the other, making a straight line. So if they form a linear pair, they're automatically supplementary. Those two angles have to add up to be 180 because they make a straight line, right? I have my full half circle there. So angles 3 and 4 are supplementary. Okay, now I told you I'd give you a little trick to remember which one's which, because honestly, that is the most common mistake, is that kids will mess up that complementary is 90 and supplementary is 180. So you need a way to remember which one goes with which, okay? So I'm going to give you, I have two little ways, but you can, whatever works for you, that's fine. So how to remember which, how to keep them straight. So here's what I do.
Get it? Linear pair, straight, aha.
All right. I like to literally order them alphabetically. So if you put complementary and supplementary in alphabetical order, complementary obviously comes first. Oops. Complementary, supplementary. Put them in order. And then put the numbers in order. 90 comes before 180. You see that? So that's just one way that you can tether 90 to complementary and 180 to supplementary. All right. I don't care how you make that association. Whatever works for you. So another thing that many kids like is they have some sort of a little phrase. Because yes, compliment, that's such a nice thing. So here's just one example of a little phrase that you could come up with. You could say something like, if someone is right, it's nice to compliment them. So hopefully you're seeing the correlation here. Right is another name for a 90-degree angle, right? So that's where your 90 comes from. And compliment, although when we talk about compliment, like saying, oh, you look so nice today, that is spelled with an I. And when we're talking about angles, it's spelled with an E. Who cares, right? As long as you see compliment, complimentary, whatever, you need to associate that with a 90. And then supplementary is 180. Whatever works for you. So cement it in your brain. That complementary adds to 90, supplementary adds to 180. Okay, so just like we did with complementary, I want to make a chart for supplementary. So I'm going to give you an angle, and then I want you to give me the supplement to that angle. All right, I'm going to give you a couple of lines. And just like before, I'm going to start off easy, and then I'm going to make it tricky at the end. All right, so let's start off with an angle of 70, then maybe 120, maybe 5 degrees, maybe 127 degrees. Then I'm going to ask you about x. I'm going to ask you about 3x. And I'm going to ask you about 2x minus 40. All right, so try all of these. I'll do the first one with you just so you make sure that you know what I'm talking about. If this angle is 70, I'm trying to get the supplement. So now I want them to add up to be 180 because I'm looking for supplements here, not complements. That was on the last page. So supplements add up to be 180. So what I really need to do to get this number is to do 180 minus that number. So for this first one, that's how I'm going to land on 110. Okay, so now that you have an example problem done out, please try the rest. Get as far as you can. I will be calling on people at random. So make sure you have your answers and you're ready to share them. Oh, geez, sorry. My keyboard's falling off its little stand here. Too much stuff everywhere. Okay, so let's see if we can get some of these filled in. If my original angle is 120, John, what is the supplement?
Hold on. $60?
Yes, 60. My two angles just have to add up to be 180, right? So 60 works. All right, if my original angle was 5, Molly B, what would my supplement be?
175.
You got it, 175. And if my original angle was 127, Katrin, what would my supplement be?
53.
Yes, 53. I did my math wrong in my head. I thought it was 63. But you're right, it is 53. Good. And so what am I going to do if it's X? Matthew, what is it if it's X?
180 minus X.
You got it. 180 minus X, because I'm always doing 180 minus whatever that number is. That's it. So if it's 3X, Riley, what do you say that one's got to be?
The answer would have to be 60.
To this one?
Oh, I thought you wanted the answer for X.
Oh, I see what you're doing. You're saying that this equals, now you're thinking about it a different way. You want to take 180 and subtract whatever that number is. So
Okay.
see how we did it with the X?
So yeah, 180 minus 3X.
Yes, that's it. 180
Okay.
minus 3X. And then the last one is super weird, right? Just like when we did it with complementary. This one's going to feel very strange at first. Does anybody think they have the right answer and they want to volunteer what they got? When you did 180 minus this whole thing? Anybody want to volunteer their answer? Once they simplified, anybody? Feel free to send it to me in the chat if you want. So here's what we're doing for this last one that's really weird, but it follows the same pattern as all the others. I'm still going to do 180 minus this number. You just have to make sure you're subtracting that whole number. So you have to put it in parentheses. So that really has to be where you start. You have to do 180 minus all of that. And it looks like this. And now if you're going to simplify that answer, let's distribute that negative. So you'd get 180 minus 2x, but now it turns into plus 40, right? If you minus a negative, you get plus. So I'm almost done. I have 180 and 40 that I can combine. 180 and 40 together, it's just 220. So I actually get 220 minus 2x. Cool. And it still works. If you take this number here and you add it with this number here, you're going to get 180, just like you should every other time. Try it. Look, the 2x's cancel. Yep. And then negative 40 and 220. It is 180. It does work. That's so cool. Just make sure that you use the parentheses and you actually distribute that negative. Otherwise, it's not gonna work out. Okay, so I do just want to do 2 more problems with you with supplementary. So I'll show you one in a diagram and then one just in words, and then we're done. Okay, so let me flip the page. Let's try this one, nice and easy. Oh, did my camera freeze again? Man, what is up with this thing? Give me a sec. I don't know what's gotten into this. I tell you, it works for like days, no problems. And then it can't even do like one block without freaking out.
Then the weekend ends and it stops working.
Yeah. I mean, I know this camera is getting up there in age because I've had this a long time. We're old friends. But anyway, so take a look at this one. You're going to have a question just like this, and that's all I give you. Just that diagram, I'm going to ask you to solve for x. So go ahead, write yourself an equation and solve it. That's all the information you get. All right, I'm going to call on someone at random for my equation here. Let's see. Molly S., what would my equation look like this time? That's perfect. Right? My two angles together add up to be 180. That's it. There's my equation. Now all I have to do is solve it. So 7x and x is 8x. And now you just do what you do. Solve, solve, solve. Yep, yep, yep. I believe 200 divided by 8 is just 25. So that is what I'm going to have to see on tonight's homework. Okay, when you get a question like this, I need to see that. All right, I'm going to do one more question with you. And you know what? I'm going to flip it up because I think on your homework they talk about, they use angles A and B instead of 1 and 2. So I'll do it just like they do it. Okay, this is a question just like what you could see on your homework. So I'm going to start, I'm going to read it, right? I notice right away it says A and B are supplementary. That's enough to set up my model equation right then and there. If these two angles are going to be supplementary, that means I know that A plus B is 180 just by them using that word supplementary. So I like to write out a model equation. You don't have to, but I find it very helpful. So these two angles must add together to be 180. There's my model equation. Now that you have that, now finish reading it and then just pop in all the pieces. Be careful. You'll notice that this time I didn't actually ask you to solve for x. I asked you to solve for the measure of angle B. Now you can't do that until you figure out what x is. But just be careful that you're answering the question that they ask, not what question you feel like answering. You got to answer the question that is asked. Okay, so try this. Let me give you a moment. Okay, so let's try this one together now. So angle A, we know is just 4x minus 15. Plus angle B is x plus 5. And I already know that it equals 180. So there's the equation that I need. Now I'm just going to solve the equation like I always do. 4x and x is 5x. Negative 15 and 5 is a negative 10.
You just froze.
Oh, I did? Shoot.
Either that or you're thinking real hard.
Okay, let's zoom back in here. All right, so I'm just solving my equation and I'm up to here, and 190 divided by 5 is 38? Is that right? Double check me.
I'm liking it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah? Okay, good. But 38 is not my answer, is it? No, because if you look back at the question, they actually never even asked me to find x. They asked me to find the measure of angle B. So, given what I know, what is the measure of angle B? Yes, 43 is correct. So, measure of angle B equals 43 degrees. because I'll just add that in there. 38 plus 5 equals 43.
You miss. Oh no, I'm looking at the wrong one. Okay, I'm looking at A. Shame.
Oh. All right, so there would be my final answer, 43 degrees. All right, so does anybody have any questions right now? So on your homework, just make sure that you give the answer for whatever they ask. If they ask for X, okay, fine, give them X. If they ask for angle A, give them angle A. Angle B, give them angle B. Whatever they want, give it to them. All right, so speaking of your homework, let me flip to it and show you exactly what I want. Let's see here. Delta, D block. And here we go. All right, let me share this out. So when you come on to Delta today, you will see homework 17 up here at the top. So you're going to see you have 2 of them here that are pretty straightforward. So I'll just do one of each of these real quick. So first one, identify angles. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just going to hop in with my iPad so I can draw. Okay, so this one is asking me which angle number represents the linear pair of MSN. So if I just come in and I'm looking, okay, MSN. So if I trace it, M to S to N, this is the angle they're talking about. They want to know who makes a linear pair with that one. So let me draw it actually a little bit better. You'll notice there are actually 2 angles that form a linear pair with angle 6. Here's one of them right here. Let me switch colors. This one forms a linear pair. See how they make that full rainbow together? So there's that one, but they wanted a numbered angle. And that one's just an S. But this one, look at those, see? Those 2 make the full rainbow and they make a straight line. So it's angle 5 they want here. So this, obviously, there's no work to be shown here. You just have to look at the diagram and see which one they want. So you have one small section like that. Then this one's going to ask you for some actual angle measures. Okay, so let's just take a look at this one. Here's what I see. I have a straight line right here. These 2 have to add up to be 180. Those are a linear pair. So I can just do 180 minus 55. What's that, 125? So great. Now I know angle C is 125. Great. Now how am I supposed to figure out angle B? Oh, wow, look at this. Aren't these 2 180? You bet they are. So guess what? That actually means that B ends up being 55 as well. Weird. Or is it weird? I don't know. So that one's 55. Make sure when you come down here that you enter them in the correct boxes. So B was 55. C is 125. Okay, so just make sure that you put them in the right spots. All right, so I don't need to see your work for that. It's just numbers. But you are eventually going to get to this one that just says question. When you click it, this one is just from me. Look, I tell you, hey, I need to see your work from here on out. So these questions to the end, I need you to get out a piece of paper. I would love for you to write homework 17 with your name on it. And then just show me your equations and your work for the remainder of the questions here. Okay? So you're just going to say, yep, I understand. If for some reason you can't get it to upload on Jupyter or whatever, just email me, okay? We can figure it out. All right? It's not a big deal. So don't get nervous that you can't make it. I mean, it should be fine, but if you're having any issues, guys, you know, I'm easy peasy. Just tell me and it's fine. No need to get worked up. Okay? So then when you get to the next section, you will see that these are ones, oh yes, okay, I'm going to need to write an equation here. I'm going to need, in this case, and this is exactly what I would do. I would say, oh, these 2 angles add up to be 90. So I would write 4x plus 6 plus 44 equals 90. And then I would solve it. 6 and 44 is 50 minus the 50. So 4x equals 40 divided by 4. That means that x is just 10. You're still going to put your answer in delta like always. So I'm still going to pop in 10, right? I'm going to make sure that that's what they wanted. Yep, they wanted me to solve for x. Got it. Submit. Yep. Perfect. Okay, so now what I would do if I were you, I'm going to be writing that on a piece of paper, not on the computer screen. And then when you're done, just send me the picture of your whole page. Nice and easy, right? I hope. So that's all I need. And there's 7 questions that you have to do that for. So there's 4 just like that, and then you're going to have 3 that are kind of like this. Notice that this is just words. This is all in words here, okay? So I'm reading, I'm like, oh, they said supplementary. That means my 2 angles are going to add to 180. And notice this time they want me to find the measure of angle A. So I'm not just finding x. So just be on the lookout for that. All right. Okay, does anybody have any questions right now? Anything that I can help you out with? So again, the whole first section of the homework, I don't need your work for. I mean, you can send it to me, but I don't need it. I only need it for these last 7. All right, let me